In a year when comic book movies have been more plentiful than pleasurable, will DC's latest and the dying DCEU save the day? Find out when Johnny Torch reviews Blue Beetle. Well, welcome to another Johnny Torch review. We're here in a very hot summer afternoon, and I have seen Blue Beetle yesterday. It's been a while. This is probably the latest review you're going to find on Blue Beetle, but I did want to give this one a shot. I did want to give this one a shot in the theater. I kind of was un uninterested in it from the trailers. Didn't really look like much. And to be honest with you, I went in not expecting much, and I kind of got what I was expecting. Let's put it that way. But I just wanted to do a brief video on it. I owe a video to you guys, especially whenever I review something that is just come out. Even though this one has been out for 3 weeks, but there's been a lot of hectic stuff going on in my personal life, and not feeling well right now. Even today, having seen the movie yesterday, I just wanted to make the effort before it came down from theaters. Apparently, it's not doing too well. I think it's doing better than Shazam 2. I went to the theater and I was expecting to be the only one there because when I went the second week that Shazam 2 came out, there was literally no one there. I was there in a graveyard. But there were a few people, a few stragglers. I don't know. I would have guessed about 5 people maybe were there with me in the auditorium. So people saying that this film has a little bit better legs than Shazam 2 did. Well, let's hope maybe. Um, this is the third week after its release that I got to see it, and again, just for the brief review here before I get into spoilers, if you're interested, and at this point, if you haven't seen it and you still don't want to be spoiled, I think there's probably a very few among you, but uh, I would say this is the epitome of mid. It's a very mid movie. It reminded me a lot of like Black Adam. I mean, I could throw out a bunch of Sony movies, like a lot of people are comparing it to Venom and so on. But it didn't have the charm or personality of any of those films. To me, this one reminded me the most of Shang-Chi. If Shang-Chi's sort of normal life at the beginning of the movie pulled into the basis of the plot, it would have been something like that. But basically, it just feels like a kind of routine by the numbers, sort of like Black Adam. They give you a pretty decent approximation of the history of Blue Beetle in the comics. Um, I like Sholo Medulla. I can't pronounce his name. Apologies in advance. I've been trying to pronounce his name for years, but we all know him and love him as Miguel from Cobra Kai. So I was happy to see him getting a choice superhero role here as the Jaime Reyes version of Blue Beetle. I was originally a little disappointed that they didn't start with the Ted Kord Blue Beetle, but I guess it's understandable. There's a lot of different reasons why they probably starting with the Jaime version. Because on the one hand, I'm pretty sure the Ted Kord Blue Beetle is public domain. So DC isn't really going to get any money from using the Ted Kord Blue Beetle because pretty much anybody can. So they had to come up with their own version of Blue Beetle. And of course, they made him a legacy hero, which I honestly don't like when they do that. But again, it's kind of understandable. We're going to get into the spoiler section now. Honestly, I would probably wait for streaming if I were you. Um, Not a bad movie. I wouldn't say a bad movie, but it's basically the epitome of mid. And as I said in the preamble, if you were looking forward to like something that was going to break the mold this year, with a lot of underwhelming films, to be honest with you, I really liked Shazam 2, and I still say that's the best superhero movie of the year. Um, Guardians 3 was pretty good. Ant-Man Quantumania, that was mid, but I feel like this one is sort of mid negative. And for example, Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania is like mid positive. Like if you're sitting on the fence of mid, and with Blue Beetle, I would say my feet are hanging over the side of being a little less than mid. Quantumania, I would say, was a little better than mid. So that's kind of where the Mason Dixon line is here for this. But we're going to get into spoilers now. And again, I don't think I have a whole lot to say about the film, but we'll get into the spoiler section now. So you've been warned. We start with, well, one of the things that I was glad about is they didn't kill off Ted Cord. They did say that he was missing. So that gave my heart some hope that we would at least at some point learn that Ted Cord was still alive. And we had to wait till the after credit scene to get that confirmation. So wait for the after credit scene, especially for the Air Supply song played there, which is always welcome. Uh, I'm an Air Supply fan. What can I say? But so Jaime is coming back home from college, and his family is going through some difficult times. They're going to lose the house, the hacienda, and Jaime's dad has had a heart attack, and they didn't want to tell him to worry him. And of course, they have sort of the large Latino family, and again, this is kind of something that I guess it's in the way of like Black Panther. I'm obviously not the target audience. Now, maybe these things would have meant more to me if I were, and they were shooting for the target audience. Now, it's very possible you may or may not enjoy this film more if you're the target audience. I don't know. I couldn't tell you. Like Black Panther made billions of dollars. Barbie made billions of dollars. And maybe it's just because that was the target audience showing up, and they enjoyed it much more than I probably would. Like I haven't seen Barbie, but I'm sure Black Panther, I could tell you, was a good movie. But was it the be all end all of superhero films? No. I mean, it doesn't even make my top 20. Um, Great movie, but it's just nothing special to me. In the same way, I kind of feel something like that for this film. Again, like I said, the family. I would have personally. I think they could have done without the family as much as they had them in this, because when you do the hero's journey, you kind of have to have him sort of divorced from others that are there to help him. But in this case, basically the whole family goes in on this adventure by the end. And, Nana's got a Gatling gun. The, semi irritating sister is involved trying to do things sort of like Aquafina in Shang-Chi. And, like I said, maybe what I would have done was left George Lopez in as the nutty uncle. He's Uncle Rudy, and he kind of has an important part to play. I liked the dynamic between him and Jaime, because he kind of Rudy kind of is like a screw up, and he's like, he says at one point, "I'm like, sleeping on my brother's couch," and the guy's like pushing 60 or whatever he is. I mean, in real life, George Lopez is no kid. And, he kind of is always looking up to him in a sense, like Jaime, because he respects him as family and he doesn't want to see him like beat himself up. That was nice. But again, I don't really think that the focus on the family in this needed to be in the forefront. That was something that I think they could have pulled back on a little more at some point and just let it go. Jaime's father, of course, ends up getting Uncle Bend, which again, this is kind of why I think the film is getting a reputation for being sort of a pastiche of other films that are better or at least more widely accepted. Because again, you kind of want to give the hero the impetus to go and be the hero, and he kind of even does the Black Panther thing, which is he sees his father in the heavenly realm, basically telling him, "Go back. You're needed on Earth to do what you were put on Earth to do." And that kind of makes him, in the Spider-Man sense, the power and the responsibility message. Um, Again, it wasn't bad that they did something like that to give him some kind of impetus. But again, a lot of this does feel like stuff that we kind of already been through in bigger and better pictures. I mean, a lot of people are comparing it to Iron Man, of course, because Ted Cord Industries is pretty much the DC version of Stark Industries. You have the villain, who is Susan Sarandon, who is I think Victoria Cord is her name. She's the sister of Ted Cord, and she's sort of like a mean, nasty woman. She's a nasty woman, and she is trying to take the company in a direction where Ted's daughter doesn't want it to go. His daughter's name is Jennifer, and she, is all but threatening Jen to stay out of the way, otherwise she's going to be eliminated. And she's trying to sell like weapons and stuff, basically what Stark was doing at the beginning of Iron Man. And the henchman slash other lead villain, um, Ajax, I think his name was. It wasn't Ajax. It was something like that. That was Deadpool Ajax, but it was something like that. Again, not the most memorable villains. And that's kind of what I felt was going to happen here. That's kind of the problem with DC villains is when we're doing the solo film of a DC hero that is not, that doesn't have the best rogues gallery. I mean, if we're not doing Flash, Superman, Batman, they really don't have a lot to choose from for Black Adam or Blue Beetle. And so we get basically the same thing they did with Venom, the same thing they did with Morbius. You got a guy wearing a suit, essentially the same as Blue Beetle, but a more vicious and violent version of the character, his evil doppelganger, in other words. And that's kind of what we get here. And he's okay. He's serviceable. And I have a feeling, well, let's talk about what I think everybody kind of wanted to know going in. How woke was it? Eventually, they just have to make sure that Susan Sarandon is the only true villain of the piece, because the whole cast is basically Latino, the same way that, like I said, Black Panther was basically all black cast except for like Everett Ross and maybe a couple of uh, characters that were incidental to the story. So in this case, the villain is also Latino, and finally, when Jaime is about to break with his character and actually kill him, the Scarab, which I can't remember the actual name of the Scarab, the intelligence behind it, sort of lets him see his past, and that he had sort of a past in, I don't know what kind of South American country it was, but war killed his mother, and he ended up having to, as an injured like victim, rely on Victoria Cord giving him, cybernetic implants and so forth, and he kind of becomes the pet project of her. And she's sort of the stereotypical racist villain. There's sort of the pudgy scientist guy. She's always calling him Sanchez or something when that's not his name. And that's kind of the woke stuff where we have to have the villain be sort of that prototypical racist that's not really, you know, too racist in broad strokes, but you know what they're trying to say. I don't know. I didn't really feel that this film hit me over the head with wokeness. I don't really feel like it insulted me. I mean, they had a couple of lines, of course, about, they throw Mexicans in jail and they don't really care. And, I think the father and grandmother were illegal aliens, and they're kind of afraid that they'll find out someday and get deported. I mean, that kind of stuff didn't really bother me. Like they're trying to force some kind of woke message down my throat. It didn't really seem that way to me, at least. Possibly the most stereotypical role was that of Susan Sarandon's, you know, blatantly racist character, I suppose. But again, they didn't really do it to a point where it was um, uncomfortable. I mean, they probably uh, had a version of this that was maybe more intense on that, but if they did, it didn't seem to make it to the final cut, because I know they were trying to say that this was sort of like a I don't know, an indictment of how, you know, race relations were under Trump or something. I don't know. If that's the case, they failed because it really wasn't that strong of a message. But again, the other character, Ted Kord's daughter, is Brazilian, which I don't know the comics too well about Ted Kord if he actually had a daughter or something. But um, again, they sort of don't really even have that token nice white person because she's Brazilian and she honestly I would have guessed was also some Latino. Um, but again, so I don't know. I think Sholo was the high point in the movie. He's a good actor. He's a really good actor. If you've seen Cobra Kai, you know that's true. And he has a lot of emotional beats he has to get to here that were good and performed well. He's a handsome lad, so of course he's going to look good, as the character. The costume was good. I kind of I thought it was a step too far that his clothes get burned off every time he puts the costume on, and there's sort of like the element of body horror in this that it sort of the scarab embeds itself into his back and all that. But I think that was probably just a step too far where he's like basically naked like two or three times in the film because of that. And I don't know. The costume looked great. I think the people are complaining about sort of the practical costume not looking as good. Well, that's kind of the way it goes. I mean, you're going to soup up the CGI costume; it's going to look better. But I thought in both cases it was good. I like the eyes, especially. It's a well designed costume. I don't know who exactly designed it in the comics, but it's really good. And we get some pretty decent action. I unfortunately was kind of tired when I went to see this movie, so I really didn't. I couldn't focus on the action too much. It seemed shot well, but there was you know, some points where I was kind of like, "What's going on?" Maybe it was just me. I don't know, but I would say the CGI was very good. It didn't disappoint. The action scenes, there's a couple of good ones in this. They have the typical scene where he's flying around trying to figure out what the suit can do and whatever, and that's also nice. And the Blue Beetle lore, I think, is also well served here because Jen, the daughter of Ted Cord, she actually takes them to the Blue Beetle lair where they have the big bug ship that he used to fly around in, and the original costumes. I think one from the 30s where he originally was in that costume, and then there was the one that was more familiar. If you're an 80s kid like I was, seeing him in that costume, Ted Cord. So they didn't really like throw all that stuff out. They didn't forget about it all. And again, like I said, I really want to see a Ted Cord Blue Beetle and Booster Gold movie. That would be great. And it'd be nice if they make that now next, and you could have that be sort of the bridge before you get into Blue Beetle 2, which hopefully we do get a Blue Beetle 2 because I mean, I like the character. I was familiar with the character from um, Young Justice, and that was that was a good show. I didn't watch the I don't know what is it on 2 more years after it left Cartoon Network, but again, he was a good character, and I enjoyed his participation in Young Justice, and I felt like they kind of did justice to him in that manner from the show, from what I know of him. So I can't complain. Um, Not too many of the jokes landed for me, really. Again, I was in a auditorium with only a half dozen people, so there really wasn't any real big laughs that I can remember. I remember chuckling a couple of times, but if you're asking me for like any real, laugh out loud moments, I can't really remember them. There was like one or two moments, probably having to do with Georgia Lopez, that were pretty funny. But again, everything about it feels pretty mid. I mean, it's got serviceable action, it has a pretty good cast. I mean, like I said, Jolo being the standout. I don't know a whole lot about George Lopez. I know that he had his own show and so on and so forth. He's kind of funny in that way. Like he's got the Cheech and Chong action figures or whatever you call them, the bobbleheads or whatever in his car, and he's making jokes about weed and stuff. A lot of people are acting like this is maybe too stereotypical. I don't know who am I to say, but I mean, if that's the kind of vibe you want to go on, he was funny in that respect. I thought he was good. So like I said, he was probably the standout of the supporting cast. Um, again, decent action. I think if you were to catch me coming out of the theater, I was a lot more underwhelmed. Looking back at it, I seem to recall it a little more fondly. This is one that I probably should watch again to see if I have a real beat on it. But at the time, it felt like I said, the beginning sort of stretches and gets kind of boring. Once we've established the family, I was happy and content, let's say, to go on to like the hero's journey. And so he gets the scarab from Jen, and he starts learning about the powers and everything. And it kind of like after that kind of is just like meandering a little bit with the sort of mid-movie crisis of, well, he's got to do something, and we really don't want him to like master the suit and everything yet. And then it comes to like there's a nice action scene with the bad guy, and then it comes to like a point where like the family comes into it again, and they're like trying to the bad guys like try to come in, they burn down the hacienda, whatever. And it kind of feels like at that point now the story is more about the family than it is about Jaime. I was going to call him Miguel for a minute because I just keep thinking of him as Miguel. But, and I kind of feel like it lost its way a little bit at that point around there. And I don't know. It feels like, he has to be rescued by like I said, the scientist guy. It kind of felt like at a certain point, he was like left in the lurch, Blue Beetle, as a hero. And one of the things I admired is they didn't try to make him a killer. I mean, he wasn't a kid. I think he says he's 22 years old in the film, so I guess he technically wouldn't have been a kid killing because he's just a young guy. But his family does all the killing, but he doesn't until the very end when he's tempted to kill, and the suit won't let him kill because he says all along through the whole movie, no lethal weapons. We're not going to kill, and I don't believe in killing people. His family doesn't seem to be quite as restrained, so to speak. I know Nana mowed down a bunch of people. Rudy squashed a guy. There might have been a couple more, but so I mean, I like when they do that, where they try to reinforce that the hero is not supposed to kill. When you're a superhero and you have extra powers and this and that, you're not supposed to use them, to take lives and this and that. So again, I liked that. Like I said, for a ranking, for a rating here, I would say, like I said yesterday, I would have said it was a 2.5-star film. That's not really that good. That's like Amazing Spider-Man. I said was like 2.5. Really doesn't have any redeeming qualities, but maybe one or two casting choices. I feel that way about Man of Steel. It's okay. It's one is poor, so I wouldn't say it's poor. It has a couple good casting choices. This feels very much like that, but I'm kind of tempted to bump it up to 3 because apart from the weakness of the story at the end, where, like I said, he kind of doesn't get to become his own hero. He kind of is like relying on the family. But the message of this movie is basically the family is what makes you stronger, and you have your family to lean on and support you and back you up when you need them. So I can't really, I don't know, I can't really feel like they failed in what they were trying to do here. It just felt pretty underwhelming in execution when they got there at the end. So I'm gonna begrudgingly give it 3 stars out of 5. I think it's a 3-star film. It's mid. It's not really anything to get excited over, nor is it really bad in a, probably won't watch it again thing. I kind of feel like watching it again. But again, this is not like really something that I would go back to over and over again. I really don't think you even need to see it in theaters, really. I mean, I suppose you should if you want a Blue Beetle too. So you might think about that. But again, it's kind of mid of the pack. It's you know, like I said, I would say this is kind of like on par for Black Adam if you could roll with Black Adam, you probably can roll with this. If you didn't like Black Adam, you're probably not going to like this. That's probably the measuring rod for this film. For a letter grade, I would give it, I'll say a C, a solid C. It's not, again, it's not something where, like 2 would be a D territory, or maybe a C minus would be like sort of the equivalent of, like 2.5 stars. So I would just say a C. I would probably give it a C. So who knows? I honestly think that, Cholo would be great as this character in like a better film, like in a Teen Titans film or something, like Young Justice or something. I think if you put Jaime's Blue Beetle into that, you probably have a much better film. I don't think he can carry the film by himself and have it be as good as it probably could be. I think another solution is, that's why I say I would like to see a Blue Beetle too, because if they get a good actor, a good quality actor to play Ted Cord, and you let him take, Jaime under his wing and sort of be his Bruce Wayne to his, Batman Beyond, Terry McGinnis, you might actually have a better picture, because it won't deal with, well, the family is just mucking around and trying to save the day, and Jaime really doesn't know what he's doing. He's kind of just a passive hero in this. When it's called upon for him to do something, it's kind of the suit doing it for him. If they could just eliminate all those problems in a sequel, I think a sequel would probably be great. I think it would be a lot better than what we got if they can take it to the next level in the next film. So that's my opinion on Blue Beetle. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, fun movie, worth a watch, I would say, but just keep your expectations tempered. It's basically, like I said, it's basically something that I think was going to originally show up on HBO Max, and that's probably what the level of it is. And again, this is something that James Gunn, he's rebooting the DC universe, but he has said that this version of Blue Beetle, the Xolo Jaime Reyes Blue Beetle, will be a part of the Gunverse. So while this is supposedly technically not the first film in the Gunverse, because he had nothing to do with it, he is going to keep Blue Beetle in this form and sort of import him over to the Gunverse when it is fully established with Superman. When is that coming out? Is that 2025? Not sure. I think so. All right, so let me know what you think in the comments below, and let me know what you think about Blue Beetle. And make sure you like, share, and subscribe, do all those wonderful things. And we will see you next time. And until next we meet, this is Johnny Torch reminding you once again, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.